Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Welcome back to the Be Bold podcast. You might have noticed that I was on a short break over the past couple of weeks while I was in Papua New Guinea. I'm back and I've got some great conversations coming up that you'll definitely want to hear. If you're new to the podcast, this is where I feature conversations with women who share their inspirational stories. These are amazing women forging their own path to success in a variety of fields, including travel, adventure, sports, music, philanthropy, spirituality, and much more. I really love having these conversations, and I enjoy re-listening to them because I always learn something and find just some nugget that gets me excited about whatever topic we're covering. The one thread these women have in common is that they are bold in what they do. They follow what they love and somehow have created a lifestyle that supports it. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play and leave a review. And that literally takes just a couple of minutes. I also ask that if you like what you hear, please introduce someone to the podcast whom you think might get something out of it. And that will help build our Be Bold community. Today's guest is Katie Mackey. Katie is a professional mid-distance runner who runs for the Brooks Beasts Track Club. And for those of you who don't know, Brooks is based here in Seattle, so I recently had a chance to sit down with her at the Brooks offices. When we recorded this, it was the week before I was running the Foot Traffic Flat Marathon on Sauvie Island, and you'll hear us refer to that in this conversation. I had hoped to qualify for the Boston Marathon, which I did. And by the way, you can hear about how I came to running and ultimately attain that Boston qualifying time on episode 15. Katie's pretty awesome. She attempted to qualify for Rio at the Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon last year, and she missed it by one spot. After that experience, she spent a couple of months not quite feeling settled and wondered about continuing with her running career, but she picked herself up and she found new purpose. Earlier this year, she won a national title in a road mile race in Iowa, and now she's looking ahead to the Tokyo Olympics in 2020. Even if you're not a runner, you're going to find inspiration in this conversation. We covered a wide range of topics, including how her performance improved once her husband started coaching her. We also talked about the specifics of her training as a Brooks Beast professional athlete and what her training days look like. And that means weeks where she's running as many as 80 miles. We talked about the importance of recovery and what it is that makes a person a great runner. And I'm particularly fascinated by the fact that my fastest mile is 7:20, but she ran a 4:10 when she was at the University of Washington. We do talk about how she handled those Olympic trials, but also how she got back on track and is now looking forward to Tokyo. And given her travel schedule, we also talk about how she finds places to run, like in Morocco and Monaco, and how she's learned to be more flexible with her food and nutrition when she's on the road. Please enjoy this conversation with Katie Mackey. Tell me what you had for breakfast today and make it good.
Well, I had one over easy egg.
Hey, that's good. Okay. No, let's keep going. No, I'm saying the egg is good. Last time I asked a doctor what she had, and she said, I started out with dark chocolate. I'm like, no, you can't say that. So tell me what else you had with the egg.
And then some toast with some raspberry jam and a grapefruit and a lot of calcium supplements and some kombucha.
Awesome.
I've been getting into making my own kombucha, and then also through this particular injury, I have been doing a lot of reading on bone broth. Yeah. And so I made bone broth for the first time, and then which sounds really gross, but it actually tastes delicious.
Well, I'm mostly vegan, so it sounds really gross.
Oh, so it sounds disgusting.
Yeah, it does. So what do you do for a bone broth?
So you soak bones in like a crock pot, basically, for 48 hours, and you can put anything else you want in it. So I normally put in some ginger and anything you would for a soup, making a broth, like onion, carrot, and then you just kind of like let it soak. Then you take everything out, and then you have the broth. And so then I just put it in mason jars in the fridge. And so then I wake up in the morning and I heat it up and drink it like a tea. And Yeah, it has a really good flavor to it. It's just,
like
more
chicken
warming.
soup for the soul kind of thing.
Like a chicken soup.
Right. And then what is that supposed to do for you?
So there's lots of, obviously, minerals and nutrients that are in bone. And so it comes out of the bone into the broth. And then it's supposed to just be really good for the blood and for, like obviously all the bones and everything, like your body. It's in a really accessible state.
Okay. Were you going to say that you are making kombucha, or you're making the making was the bone broth?
Oh no, I've been making kombucha too. So I have all these weird things that I'm drinking in the morning, like my homemade kombucha and my homemade bone broth.
Yeah, I just started making kombucha myself. So we'll have to share some tips, because my last one came out really vinegary, not
maybe you left it for too long.
Maybe I did that. So I think I just have to add a bunch of sugar to the next batch or something.
Yeah, and then it gets more vinegary the longer it ferments. So you can even just sometimes what I do is I taste a little bit. Once it gets close, after 5 days, I'll taste a little bit until it gets to the tartness that I like, and then I'll basically take it.
But I don't have to dump out what I have. I can keep the SCOBY and then just add more, like a sweeter or version of it, or just add my tea and sugar mixture to it. Is that?
Yeah, because you take some. Because you take some of it, and then you. So how did you start your kombucha?
Someone gave it to me, but it did sit for a while because I was, long story, but yeah, it did sit for a while. And then I just thought, I think I can go ahead and make it with just what I have here. But
yeah, I don't know. So so I like it after 7 days. That's when I find that it's still kind of sweet but tart. And then you take part of it, but you gotta start over with a new batch of sugar and tea, and then put a little bit of maybe I think it's a cup or something of the old vinegary sort of juice with the mother, and so you don't want to just add the sugar right into the
right, of course, yeah. Okay, great. So first, Katie, thank you so much for coming out today. We're in Fremont in Seattle, and it's the center of the universe for those people who have never been here. It's a great place, so do visit. But thank you for coming, and we're here at the Brooks Running offices, and you are a Brooks Beast for the company. Tell me what that is. You're a professional runner and a Brooks Beast. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's really cool because I've been around since the start of the team. The team just got started in 2013, but it was something that had been a long time in the making. So it had been this idea that the head of sports marketing, Jesse Williams, had, and he had contacted me after I graduated from the University of Washington and said, hey, we're this professional running shoe company, and we're in a place of the world that's amazing for training year-round, great trails, but we don't have a professional running team here, and so I'd like to create one of those, and do you want to help me do that? And I, of course, jumped at the opportunity and was so excited. I love training on a team. I find that people, kind of gravitate towards either they're the lone wolf type of trainer and they like training by themselves.
That's me.
Yeah. But me, that's too boring for me. I like being around people, and I like running with people. And so the idea of helping to be on a team of everybody trying to achieve these high goals together was really exciting to me. And so it took a couple years before the team actually got started, but it's been really cool to see how much it's grown in the last couple of years. I mean, this is only 2017, so the team's only been around for a couple of years, and already people have been making world teams and representing the U.S. And
how often do you train together?
So we meet, it's actually really unique compared to a lot of other professional teams, because a lot of other professional teams don't meet as frequently as we do. They'll meet a couple times a week, but we meet at least 6 days a week, sometimes 7, and we meet here at the office. We meet at other locations around Seattle that are good for training. We'll even meet at our house sometimes.
And then just start the run from there?
Yeah.
What do those training sessions look like?
So it varies throughout the week what they look like. So normally we kick off the week on Monday. We'll all meet here, usually at the headquarters, and Danny will give some sort of a talk.
And Danny's your coach.
And Danny Mackey is the coach.
And happens to be your husband.
And happens to be my husband. And I'll do a little bunny trail on that. I like to always quantify that and say, we were married first, and then he started coaching me.
Okay.
So we met here in Seattle at a track meet, and then
The rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. We met. Then, well, I'm trying to think of like where to go. So he was working at in performance footwear, and so he got a job opportunity at Puma in Boston in 2012, right after we had gotten married. But it was on the opposite side of the country. Both of us lived out here, and so I didn't know any training groups. I didn't know any coaches out there, and it was 3 months before the Olympic trials. And so basically I said, hey, will you coach me through the Olympic trials, because you've seen what training I've been doing, and it kind of makes sense. And he always had been coaching people on the side. He was like, I don't know about that. I don't really want to coach you. I like being the cheerleader. I like being the support system. It might be too much overlap, but he's like, we'll just do it for a couple months, and and then we'll find you a good situation out there in Boston. And then I had like the season of my life, and I PR'd at every event, and I was feeling the best I ever had, and I was racing the best I ever had late into the year. And so after the season, we had another conversation, and I was like, well, will you keep coaching me? And
so what do you attribute that to? Was it because you guys were so close and he kind of knew your habits and knew, well, Katie, you did have that chocolate for breakfast, or you had, you didn't eat as well last night. You had some pizza, and maybe you didn't perform as well this morning, or
I think it's definitely part of it, because when you're married to someone, you're going through life with them. So then you just know all of the stresses that maybe a coach wouldn't know. Like, oh, you didn't sleep well last night, or, oh, we were out and we were doing stuff this weekend with friends, so you're going to be a little bit more tired because of that. And so it is really natural for him to adjust things along the way that maybe a coach wouldn't. Of course, not that a coach-athlete can't have that relationship. It's just that the communication has to be, and the trust has to be at such high level for an athlete and coach. And that's just how it is when you're married with somebody. And so that's part of it. But I think it's also just he is really passionate about coaching, and he's really talented at coaching. You don't talk about that there's this kind of component to being a coach where you have to be like passionate about it and good at it. And he just is really good at thinking outside of the box, and he's always wanting to learn, and he's always trying new things, and he's very science-based. And he put together this really comprehensive program, just everything together, the drills, of course, the training component of it, but the weightlifting component and the nutrition component, and looking at everything together. And I don't think I just had that high level of comprehensive program before. And also coaching styles are just different, and we changed some things. And
do you think that that's helped his, I'm asking you to put words in his mouth, but do you think that then helped him work with other athletes, because he looked at you and said, well, gosh, I know all this about Katie. What can I dive in a little bit more into these other athletes and kind of put my knowledge there into practice with them?
Yeah, I wish he was here, because that's a really interesting question, and I'd like to know how he would answer it. But I think he takes something away from every coach-athlete relationship that he has, because you're working so closely with somebody, so you get to see how different people are and how people respond to different types of being pushed in different ways. And so I'm sure that there's some things that he's learned from me, hopefully, that help him to be a better coach.
Back to the training, you said you folks get together probably 6 days a week or so.
Yeah. So
I took you off topic.
Sorry.
That was me. But I do want to know about that. So
yeah.
Mondays you get together at the office and you take off on a training run.
Yeah. And and I think one thing that's unique about our team as well is Danny and Brooks really is focused on the team element of it. That's really important. They're not just looking for high performing athletes. They're looking at high performing athletes that want to be in a really close-knit team environment. One really important part of the week is that we'll get together and we'll do a recap, and Danny will talk about if there was racing that week. He'll talk about people's performances. If a big race is coming up, he'll talk about our mindset going into it. He'll talk about anything, but it's a time for us to kind of get together and kind of all get on the same page and kind of be like centered and grounded together. And then we'll go out and we'll go for a run. Tuesdays and Fridays we normally do some sort of a hard workout. And then,
so interval training kind of thing.
Yeah, either on the track or hills or tempo runs. And then we'll follow that in the weight room. with some weightlifting.
On that same day?
On that same day. So those are kind of longer days. We'll start anywhere from 9 to 10 in the morning and finish at 1 to 2 in the afternoon. And normally somewhere in the middle there, we'll stop and we'll get food together.
Yeah.
And because we really do all enjoy being around each other. So it's pretty awesome. Then on, a couple days a week, also just as important as the workouts are the recovery days, where we just run easy, don't look at our watches, don't think about pace, just really listen to our bodies and have fun, stay at a conversational pace. And then on Sundays, we'll normally meet somewhere and go for a long run, which for the 800 people, that can be an hour. And for us 5K runners, that'll be anywhere up to 2 hours.
800 meters.
800 meters, so 2 laps around the track. And then we'll go up to 2 hours, 17 miles or longer. And so
okay, stop right there, because that's really interesting. I had read that you, and I don't know if that's true. I know it's not true at this particular moment, but in general, that you're running about 40, or how many miles a week do you run when you're in training?
So my max is I'll probably get up to around 80 miles a week.
But you're considered a mid-distance runner. I always thought, and this is my ignorance, and this is so great because this is all so new for me as a relatively new runner, just in the last few years. This is a great conversation for me to understand the process. But I thought that if a person who is running maybe 80 miles a week, that meant that they were distance runners. But what I'm hearing is that even for mid-distance runners, which is, like you said, you're a 5K runner, is that kind of your sweet spot, would you say, as a 5K?
1,500, 5K.
Okay.
Yep.
So mid-distance running, and you're still doing 80 miles. That seems like it's a lot of stress on your body for the mid-distance. Is that pretty normal?
I think it's pretty normal. With a lot of top women in the U.S. are running around that sort of mileage for 1,500, 5K and up. I think where the training starts to get really varied is for 800-meter runners. That's a really interesting event to me because you do have the endurance component of it still. So you will get 800-meter runners who are still more endurance based and are running, over 40 or 50 miles a week. And then you'll also have 800-meter runners who are training like sprinters, who won't even do a typical warm-up like we will for a couple miles. They'd be like, running a couple miles before I race. They'll just do drills and strides and train like sprinters. And so that's a really, really interesting event. But for the most part, people on our team, 800 meters, come from, Danny likes to approach it from more of an endurance-based training, and so the girls on the team who are running 800 are probably running around 30 miles a week.
So if you do 17 miles on Sunday, your long run day, where are you getting the rest of those miles in for the rest of the week? Because that's another 60 miles that you have to find. Yeah,
so it varies a lot by the day. So workout days will be big volume days, probably 11 miles. That'll consist of, we'll start the workout by just doing, 20 minutes of easy jogging. I will just even turn my GPS off and go, and I'll just call it 3 miles, 21 minutes, 3 miles. And then during the workout, we're really specific with our mileage, obviously, doing the workout on the track. It's easy, or using our GPSs out on the Burt Gilman, doing tempo runs. And then we'll finish up with 20 minutes easy jogging. And then on Wednesdays and Saturdays, we'll do, easy hour running, maybe to get more volume. Come back in the evening and do another 30 minutes of easy jogging. But it's nice because, I wish Danny was here because he would explain it more eloquently than me, but there's kind of a threshold of when you get over it, your body starts to respond to the volume differently. And so
when you say when you get over it, you mean when you get over a certain
amount of time. So like 45-minute runs broken up in different times of the day is way easier on your body, for your body to handle, than going out and running 90 minutes all at once. So so on like an easy day, we don't want to stress our bodies by running 90 minutes straight, but we want to get the volume in. So I'll do an easy 45-minute run in the morning, nap, massage, whatever, the normal afternoon, and then in the evening go out for another 30-45 minute run. And so that's a good way to get those miles in, but not really stress our body, not like we're going out every day, you know, running 10 miles, 11 miles all at once.
Yeah, I didn't realize that that was such a critical thing. I've heard of, you know, some of the top, like Meb, you know, some of the really top marathoners, how they break up their sessions, you know, and do double sessions. And I didn't understand why, but that makes sense. Because I just thought, well, you just want to I personally thought you want to get your body used to doing the distances. But really, you're saying you want to get your body used to doing the mileage, getting your mileage in, but having that time for recovery.
Yeah, different things for different days. So like for the long run, then we really do want to stress our body and get that endurance component of it. So that's why we do the 2 hours all at once, you know, but we're going for different training effects on different days. Yeah.
You're a Brooks beast. And you're mentioning that you run in the morning, you're running like from 10 to 1 o'clock, you may be getting a massage, which sounds like absolute luxury to a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening, but I'm sure that there's probably some pain involved in that. And it is part of the recovery process. But what I'm hearing is that you probably don't have a full-time job in order to do this. I mean, your full-time job is a professional runner. Is that right?
Yeah. So it really is nice because at this level, it's all about recovery. It's how quick can you recover? How good can you feel for the next day, for the next workout? That's where you're getting those small little incremental gains. And so the sleep and the nutrition, and you just hit on it with the treatment, you know, we'll be getting massage, we'll be getting acupuncture, we'll be getting chiropractic treatment. Everything, all of that together, it takes a lot of time. And so it's really nice to be able to train and then have this time in my life where I can really focus on all of those little details and just like covering the best I can. And
how often are you getting massage treatments and how often are you getting acupuncture treatments?
So normally for a maintenance, I would get treatment once a week, and
for both of the, for one each.
Or like ideally I would get, you know, one acupuncture and one massage and maybe go into the chiropractor, but that's more what I would do, you know, when I'm like injured or not healthy or like trying to come back from something. Normally you're just one treatment a week, you know, an acupuncture treatment, a massage treatment.
And is it general acupuncture or is it specific to your legs, your knees, or to a certain part of your body?
That's a good question. Well, they do. It's nice if you can find somebody who does both as an athlete, like also like a very specific localized treatment to an area of pain or maybe a specific area, but then also doing the localized treatment because your body is so interconnected. You can't have one thing that's in pain and not have it affecting all the other systems of your body. And so that's one of the things that I think is so cool about acupuncture and is why I do it in addition to all these other treatments, is because you go in and then, you know, there's points for stress and digestion and sleep and everything, and all of that is so interconnected.
So when you talk about recovery and those pieces of it as part of your success, what percentage would you say, like how would you break that up? Like training is 50% important and recovery is 50% important. Like what's the percentage would you give to that? And you know what, it's not a scientific thing. Like I don't think it needs to be scientific, but I'm just curious from your perspective of like for you, what would you say kind of how that balance is?
Well, it's weird. I don't know if I could actually split it up in a percentage like that. The training is obviously the most important thing, but if you're not recovering and you get injured, then all of the training is for nothing. So the recovery is also important as the training. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could split it up like that, like percents. They're both 100% important.
Okay, no problem. So you actually talked about, you mentioned injury, and you're just coming back from an injury. Can you talk about that?
Yeah,
tell me what happened there?
So as an athlete, you're always, you know, pushing that limit. How hard can I push my body without getting injured, without giving my body enough time to recover from how much stress I'm putting on it. And so I'm an older athlete, and
you're not.
Not an older athlete. I mean, I guess like I feel like a veteran on the team. I've been doing this now, for 7 years professionally. And so I've had an opportunity to try a lot of different things. I've done altitude camp.
What's altitude camp?
So normally once a year, one of the really cool things of being a full-time professional runner is that we are able to actually go live up in the mountains for like 7 weeks at a time. We'll rent houses.
Like in Colorado? And that's your stomping or early stomping grounds, right?
Yeah, Colorado, I'm from Colorado. Yeah. So I actually did do one of the camps in Boulder, but the earlier camp that we did with the whole team was in Albuquerque. It's great training there. We go there earlier in the year because unlike a lot of other places that are at altitude, it's sunny. We can run in sports
it's not too cold.
Yeah, we're not going to be dealing with snow or a lot of other things that high altitude places would have that time of year. So anyways, we go there. Yeah, we live in 2 big houses. Lived in a house with 10 of my teammates for 7 weeks, which is, I could write a book on that just alone, like how interesting that is.
Think about a reality show there.
Yeah, most of the time we're too tired for it to actually even be an interesting reality show, but it gets interesting sometimes. Mostly good, and so then we come down from that, and at altitude it's really interesting. We go there because your body responds to altitude by producing more red blood cells, and you get a really good training stimulus from it. And then even just apart from the physiological stimulus of it, because everybody responds a little bit differently, you get this training camp part of it where we're becoming a really close-knit team. We're really getting to know each other. We're getting in each other's lives. We're having empathy for each other. And one of the really interesting things that we've heard is that in other jobs, empathy is indicative of like high level performance. And so being around each other, getting to know each other, being almost each other's family, because a lot of people on the team are married and they'll be away from their spouses for 7 weeks, and that's incredibly difficult. And so we are like each other's family, and so that kind of helps us going throughout the rest of the year to just be each other's support system and to perform at a really high level. And I think so that's one of the reasons why everybody comes. Even if, you'd say, why would an 800-meter runner need to go up to altitude for training?
Right.
Well, that's one aspect of it.
But yeah, part of a bonding thing. So to get back to your injury.
So back to my injury. So altitude camps, obviously different types of training, like how much speed work can I pile on? How much mileage can I pile on with my body still recovering and me feeling good and racing well and handling everything? And then the third element of it is, I think, the racing and the travel. So traveling to races, you're sitting, you're in a plane, you're getting off, everything's tight, you're getting off the plane, you're racing, you're getting back onto the plane, that's added stress in that you have to take into account. So I've done all of these things, and last year was a little bit of a hard year for me. I came off of the Olympic trials, having missed making the Olympic team by 1 spot. And so I came into this spring and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for broke. Like, I'm going to just really ramp it up on all these things. I'm going to do 2 altitude camps because I've done that before, and I've felt great, and I've been and I've come off of them feeling really good. I'm going to travel to these races, and I'm going to travel maybe a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit more racing than normal. I'm going to go over to, there was a Diamond League meet in Shanghai, and early in the year, sometimes I haven't traveled that far early in the year to go to races because it can interrupt training.
And Shanghai is really a polluted city, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. It was my first time in Asia. It was beautiful at night, and with the lights, it was like New York City on steroids. It was really cool down on the bunt, but then it's eerie because they turn all the lights off at 10 p.m. and then the whole city is like black.
I didn't know that. I haven't been yet.
Yeah, and then during the day, it's just if I'm sure you've been to cities over there, and the pollution is just like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it's the worst, like really one of the worst in the world.
Yeah, it was really crazy. It's so different from Seattle. It just made me so thankful for the clean air that I get to breathe in every day that I just take for granted over here running. And I can't imagine training over there full time. That would be.
So you're traveling to a destination that's polluted, and all of that kind of adds up to stress and then an injury.
Yeah. So essentially, I think I just pushed myself. The one thing with running that I would like to tell everybody listening is you can't be greedy with it. You have to really respect your body, and you have to really respect your body's limits, and you have to listen to your body, because you can, in your mind, you can have all these things that you want to do, but you have to respect the fact that your body sometimes can't do what your mind wants it to, and you have to really listen to that.
Do you think that you weren't listening to your body?
I think right before the injury happened, I didn't. I tried to pile on all these things that I'd done before together, and I'd done them successfully, healthy, but then I hadn't done them all at the same time, like I was trying to do this year. And so I found a little bit of a limit. How I normally go about it is, if anything hurts over a 3 out of a 10, and this number is going to be different for everybody, but if anything hurts a 3 over 10, or if there's any sharp pain, I always pull the workout, or pull that day. I just say, okay, today I'm going to cross train. Today I'm not going to do anything. And what was interesting about this injury is it was just achy for 1 or 2 days, and it wasn't really bad pain.
What was it?
It was I got a little bit of a hot spot on my sacrum, like right at the muscle attachment. And I think things just got really tight, and they were pulling. And then I did I was hitting it really hard because we're coming into USA. So I was doing a couple of really big speed sessions, and it was just too much. And then my body told me it was too much, but it's taken now 3 weeks, and I've just had to be really patient and listen to my body. And it's interesting, as an athlete, you have to really try and come to terms with the fact that there's many things that are out of your control. This timeline is pretty much out of my control. I mean, I'm just like waiting for my body and listening to it.
Do you think you would do things differently? One, if you didn't have a coach, and two, if that coach wasn't your husband? Do you think you would continue to try to push yourself?
Yeah, I think it's just something, it's part of the reason why I love running and I am passionate about this sport, is because I just really love that challenge of like pushing myself and finding my limits. And I think that regardless of where I was or who was coaching me, or even if I was doing running or if I was doing some other sport, I would just really enjoy doing that, like pushing the limit and like seeing what happens.
But do you think that you would continue to push through it if you didn't have somebody on the sidelines going, Katie, like you got to pull back, or even like, the Brooks Beast.
Yeah. No. And that's what a really good coach does, is a really good coach holds back the athletes. And so right after I got injured, I sat down with Danny and we looked at everything together, and we basically talked about everything that I just told you. And we were like, okay, well, this is a really good learning, and we're going to learn from this, and then we're going to train smarter going in the future, and we're going to kind of take what we've learned from this and implement it. And
before we started recording, you mentioned that you went on a run this morning, right? For the first time in a while. Yeah. And you did a 10:30 or so.
Did a mile in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. And that's great. That's me. That's my speed. We could have run this morning together.
Awesome. We should have.
No, I'm a little faster than that now, but I can certainly relate to that. And I can also relate to having to, that feeling of kind of feeling really good and you want to push it, but you just can't, either with the number of miles or with just the tempo. You just think, I feel good, I'm just going to go for it. And then you do end up paying for it. So, but I totally get that.
Yeah, it's just, your mind is so powerful, and sometimes training as hard as you can means training smarter, not harder, and knowing, okay, like I have to give myself some recovery time, and it can't be hard like every day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
totally.
It's a good thing, but I know it's frustrating. So you grew up in Colorado. Whereabouts in Colorado?
Fort Collins.
Okay. Is that near Boulder or near Denver?
It's about like an hour from Denver, hour from Boulder. They're all kind of like in the same same
gotcha.
area.
I thought it was in that region. And then you came to Seattle. You came to Seattle to go to the University of Washington.
Yeah.
I had read that you are one of, if not the most decorated runner from the UW. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they've had so many good runners coming through since I graduated. So I don't know if I'm still. I think I'm still the mile. I do know that I'm still the school record holder in the mile, but that's getting really close to being broken. So
what was that? What was the record?
Well, 1,500, 4:10 in the 1,500.
Okay, gosh, wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. I'm pushing it. I'm running a marathon next week.
Where?
Sauvie Island, which is just outside of Portland.
I know where that is because I lived in Portland for a little bit.
Oh, you did? Great.
Yeah.
So they have a 4th of July marathon. I ran it last year. And I'm attempting to qualify for Boston.
Oh,
and so for my age group, it's under 4 hours. And so that's pushing it. It'll be about a 9-minute. I think I probably have to be a little bit faster than that, a little like 9-minute mile. And the really interesting thing to me, and again, being a relatively new runner, I probably have a perspective that I wouldn't have had, if I started running 20 or 30 years ago, because I think about it a lot. I think about the mechanics of it. Whereas if I had grown up running, I would have just been like, ooh, I'm just running, that's like, and there's nothing to it. But I'm fascinated by the fact that like what our bodies are capable of. And I'm not asking for an answer here. There's no question. I find it really fascinating that I physically cannot push myself more than, I think the best I did was like a 7:20 mile, just in a kind of a test. And it's fascinating to me that I cannot get any faster than that. But yet you did this mile in, 4:10 you said. Like that's just crazy to me. Like, do you think it's here is the question. Is it innate? Is it youth? Is it training? Is it just like your body was built that way? Like where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And it's actually, there's been entire books written on that question. I mean, it's how much of it is, it comes down to almost like the nature versus nurture question. How much of it is genetic? How much of it is training? And I've asked even our physiologist, because he comes and he does VO2 max tests with us once a year. And our tests look completely different than the 800-meter runners' tests. And so I just am always fascinated. I'm always asking him, well, how does their body let them get that their lactic acid so high and where they can, physically vomit after a workout. But I'll like run as hard as I can, and I will never, my body just won't, it won't get that acidic. I will never vomit. And it's just so interesting because there definitely is that component of it where I feel like almost, I'm a Christian, and so I view my body as like this amazing gift that's been given to me. And so there is times where I sit back and I look at the body and I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that this is my body and I get to use it, and that it was born this way, and that it can do these amazing things.
Hopefully we all can have that same appreciation of it, no matter the faith too.
Yeah, no matter what. And so, but it is so different. And I experience that same feeling that you have when I look at my other teammates and I'm like, gosh, like they could go out there and do this and I can't do that. And it's so different. But a lot of it is obviously the training as well, because I bet you that if you as you continue to run over the years and you get kind of that strength and that stamina, that in a couple of years from now you will be running miles much faster, and you'll be like, oh wow, okay, like it's all kind of building, and it just gathers momentum as your body gets stronger.
Let's sit down in another couple of years and we'll see, because hopefully that's true. And I've heard that when you start running, that you have 15 years of improvement ahead of you. And so I figure if I just started running a few years ago, like 4 years ago, then I've got like another 11 years ahead of me of just improvement before I see a decline. So that's exciting to me. So that's a neat thing.
No, that's definitely how it goes. And I honestly, for marathoners in particular, I think that that's why there's so many American women that are, in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're powerhouses. And it's because they have this years of endurance and strength built up under their belts. And that's why I feel like I'm just entering my prime now. And like I'm confident that if I can stay healthy, these next 5 to 10 years will be the best.
And
because they're just.
Are you 29 now? Is that
29?
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a lot of the women, it's not uncommon. I mean, even the women in the 1500, they're, all of the women who made the team, I think, are over 30 this year. I know that like the two top women right now in my event are, mid 30s, sort of like early mid 30s. So,
and I've seen a lot of articles about ultra runners. So anyone who's doing more than a marathon, but really, the distances that a lot of ultra runners are doing these days are 50, 100, 200, literally across the country or across states. And I'm seeing that they're the quote unquote the masters. So they're in their 50s, performing at these levels. So I think that's really fascinating. How do you, because you are doing some traveling and you're traveling, I think I saw something in your schedule where you're doing some international races as well. So where have you traveled to internationally to run races?
So the American season, and this is shifting a little bit, but typically the American track season corresponds with the collegiate track season. And so after all of the colleges are out for the summer and their races are done and USA's is over, there hasn't typically been a lot of domestic races. And so athletes will go over to Europe because the European racing season is a little bit later, and so there's all these big races over there that athletes can get into, the IAAF meets, the Diamond League meets, and some of these meets track is so popular over there. I ran the London Diamond League race a couple of years ago, and there was 60,000 people
what is that race?
It's just the London Diamond League. They hold it in the Olympic Stadium.
So it's track and field.
Yeah. I mean, of course, they show up to see like Usain Bolt run, right? The fast, Yeah. but
it's really popular, far more popular than here.
Yes, and it's really a show over there. They'll have live music, and you can buy beer, and there's fireworks, and there's flames that shoot up at the finish of every race, like right in the track, and the announcers they know so much about the athletes, and there's not gaps. It's just one thing after the other, and it really is this production, and it's very, very, very fun to be a part of, and it's very fun to watch. And so I think that there's a lot of people that are inspired by that and want to bring it back to the U.S. and kind of have U.S. track be popular again and kind of bring that same atmosphere back. But that's probably my favorite. One of my favorite, that comes to mind first. Yeah, it's like one of the coolest meets I've had over there.
Where else have you been?
So they have a lot of meets in, Belgium, France. I've raced in Zagreb, Croatia before. There's a lot of meets down in Italy. Probably one of the more interesting places that I've raced is they had the Continental Cup down in Marrakesh, Morocco, a few years ago. And that was another, we went. So lots of times when I'm racing, we'll go in the day before, we'll be at the hotel, we'll go to the track, we'll race, and then we'll fly out early the next morning.
So you're there for just a couple of days?
Yeah, and I won't get to travel around, because I can't be on my legs, walking around, seeing a lot. But then every once in a while, we'll get an extra day after the meet, or we'll be somewhere for a longer period of time, like a week, and so we'll get to actually get out and see a little bit of the area.
How do you acclimate in terms of the time zone when it has to be so quick in and out like that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's something that I've gotten a lot better at with time, is trying to time the flights and use melatonin to just really try and like get on their schedule as quickly as possible. So I used to do flights to Europe in particular, where I would leave and then I would get there early in the morning. But then I would almost be pulling this like 48-hour stint, because you can't really sleep that well on the plane, and then you would just feel so tired, so exhausted, for a couple of days afterwards. So now I try and time it where I'll like get a little bit of sleep on the plane, but then I try and get there in the evening. So then you
can sleep for that night.
So then like as soon as I get to the hotel, then I'm can sleep, and normally that's fine because you're like so tired from the travel, you don't have a hard time sleeping, even though it's like the middle of the day back home. So you just we just kind of like figure it out. And honestly, I just try and, up until the race, I just try and sleep as much as possible.
Have you heard of this study? And I think they're using this in the military, that to get over jet lag, what you want to do is you want to fast for the 18 hours before your first meal. And so so you want to take that time. I'm pretty sure it's 18 hours. So you want to take that time, where you're flying, whether it's to Asia or whether you're flying to Europe, and you just want to make sure that you're not eating for an extended period of time. And somehow that gets your circadian rhythm kind of, jumping into gear like upon arrival, so that whether you're arriving in the evening or you're arriving in the morning, you just figure out when your first meal is at your destination, you back that out, and then you just don't eat. And the worst thing that you can do is eat airplane food, right? Yeah. So just bring your snacks if you are going to eat. But that's an interesting thing, especially for somebody who has to be really on it, like right when you arrive. That's something to think about, just to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I actually haven't heard of that study yet, so I'll definitely look up about that.
Don't go doing it and then just to have a terrible meet because of me. You'll be like, Beth told me that.
Well, as an athlete, it's almost impossible to not eat for 18 hours. That's more what I'm thinking about, is how would I not eat for 18 hours? Like, the only time I cannot be eating is when I'm sleeping.
I know. Well, that's a good question. Just fueling and your calorie intake. Are you really meticulous about your fueling and how much you're eating on a daily basis, just in terms of your calories?
Not all year, because it just, for me, I think it's really hard if you were keeping track of things really closely all year round. It would just become too obsessive, and I think it would just become unhealthy. But for the part of the year where we're leading up to big competitions for a couple months, when we're really trying to dial it in, I do keep track, but not necessarily of calories, but I keep track of macronutrients. So just to make sure that I'm giving my body what it needs for optimum performance and recovery. So I'll keep track of how many grams of protein I eat, how many grams of fat, and how many grams of carbohydrate. And then I don't even count calories. The calories just take care of themselves off of those things. So
do you have an estimate of how many calories?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to think. So grams of protein, I want to say I try and keep it around 80 grams of protein every day. Grams of fat, I think 50 to 60 grams of fat. And of course, healthy fats are better, nuts and avocado and all the olive oil, those sorts of things. And then for carbohydrates, then I actually wear a heart rate monitor when I run. And so then I can see how many carbohydrates I burned on my run. And so then I have a baseline of carbohydrates, like 120 grams of carbohydrates just from living. And then I'll add on how many grams of carbohydrates that I burned in that day's run, because it varies so much.
And then you want
a
net, and then you're looking at a net from
looking
the carbs.
At a net, yeah.
So I use a heart rate monitor whenever I run also. How does that show what carbs you're burning?
So you take your calories and you divide it by 4.
Okay.
And then that's how many grams of carbohydrates.
Oh, interesting. And is that whether you're in an aerobic or anaerobic state?
And so it keeps track of both. I mean, like, the harder you're working, the more calories you're burning, the more grams of. Well, I mean, if you want to get really specific about it, sometimes you're burning fat, sometimes you're burning carbohydrates.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But yeah, I don't get that specific with it. I just take it and count it as carbohydrates.
Do you use any apps to track that?
hold on a second here. I always forget the name. So I use Fat Secret. It's a really corny name of an app, but it's one of the best apps I've found where you actually can just keep track of your grams of macronutrients very easily, and it will also tell you calories. I don't really pay attention to that but as much. And then it has a lot of foods, and it has a scanner, so you can actually scan
like
the barcode of most foods, which is nice because I'm a little lazy and I like to be able to just scan it and have it.
It's not even lazy; it's just more accurate. I use Chronometer, which is another good one for that. Okay. And I used to use Lose It, which is another. It's like
all these names.
Yeah, another name for it. But yeah, those are good. And you know what I'll do? I'll put those in the show notes too, and I'll just put links to it so if people want that information.
And also, one other thing on diet that I think for women is particularly important is getting the healthy fats, because I think that there is a big a lot more research is backing this up recently, but I think that for women, exercising hard but maintaining a regular menstrual cycle is very important. And I've found a lot of correlation between how much, the fat that you're taking in your diet. You can have a really low body fat and be really active and be really fit, but if you're getting enough fat in your diet, then it shouldn't disrupt your menstrual cycle at all.
Oh, I didn't know that there was that correlation.
Yeah, it's a big topic with especially elite athletes right now, because there is the athlete female triad in a lot of these high performing sports, and so I just always like to point that out, especially since this is more geared towards women, that the healthy fat is a really important part of the diet.
Yeah, great. And we went through so many years believing or being told that stay away from fat, right? That's what was
you need fat. You need fat to synthesize hormones and for everything in your body.
Right.
So
I know, but the healthy fats,
right?
Not the Oreo cookies.
Well, so every once in a while you need Oreo cookies, but that's just for sanity.
I know, and those are vegan too. That's the whole thing. Isn't that crazy? That that's like a disgusting thought that they're vegan. Yeah. There's no dairy in it because it's all I'm sorry, it's all chemicals that are in there. But I couldn't believe it when somebody told me that Oreos were vegan.
So, that's crazy. I would have thought that.
I know. I saw a reference online that you were talking about salads, and you said that you said sometimes you just need a good salad dressing.
Yeah, we get really creative during the year. I'm like, I cannot eat one more salad, so I just pick my favorite salad dressing, and I love Caesar dressing. It's not healthy, but I'm like, hey, if I am gonna be eating, if it's gonna make it so that I am enjoying the salad and eating the salad, then it's not the worst thing in the world to have a couple tablespoons of Caesar dressing on there.
I know. My thing is croutons. Like
good croutons.
I know, if I'm making a salad and it's like I've finished making it and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no croutons. I'm like, I am going to the store and getting croutons.
Cheese too. Cheese can really spice up a salad. Nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts. It's all about what you put on the salad that you enjoy eating.
I know.
That makes it taste good.
Yeah, and the problem is that if you go to a restaurant and you order a salad and you think you're doing this big healthy thing, then they usually they drench it in salad dressing. And that's where you really get caught. And then then you've got a big plate of bread that's like delicious and you don't, but I think in moderation, and getting those macronutrients and getting the greens and and everything else, the healthy parts of that, I do think is really important. But I like that. I'm like, that's a good one, the salad dressing. Like have a little salad dressing. As long as it's not like 6 tablespoons.
Yeah, it's the little things.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned earlier the Olympic trials.
Yes.
And you had missed going to Rio by one spot on that. And that was in the 1,500 meter?
That was in the 5K.
Oh, and the 5K. Okay. That was a difficult time, right?
Yeah. It was hard because it's just this goal that everybody, you build it up and it's what you dream about when you're little. The Olympics. Oh, someday I want to be in the Olympics. And you work so hard and you get there and to be so close, but then not actually go. And I don't think it's just unique to me. I think a lot of athletes struggle with that, is like, well, was it all worth it? Is it worth keeping going? Like, what is my purpose in this if it's not that? and
had you dreamed about that? Like, had you always been into sports since you were a young girl and you're like, one day I am going to go to the Olympics? So that was on your mind?
Yeah, well, I grew up with a dad who ran. So you always think what your parents are doing is the coolest, and so I just thought running was the coolest always. It's a little bit unique. I never did other sports growing up. I just always wanted to be a runner, and I just always was running and bunny trail. But my dad actually he was a high school math teacher, and so he loves numbers and graphs and charts, and he set this goal for himself in high school that he wanted to run 100,000 miles by the time he turned 50. And he's 57 and he's going to hit 100,000 miles this year. It got a little bit off track because he didn't take into account, maybe I'm going to get injured in one of, between the time that I'm now and 50. That was really cool growing up with him, because he was just, every day he would go out there and he would run his 10 miles and he was very healthy and he just loved running. And then it was an activity that we could do together to spend time together. And so my dad actually keeps track also of how many miles he's run with each person.
Oh, I love it.
And so this year, I just surpassed the guy that he was teaching with for over 20 years, and they would run together on lunch breaks, and I just passed him. So now I'm number one on my dad's list of I've run the most miles with him, more than anybody else, and that's just so special to our relationship, because thousands of miles we've run together is thousands of conversations. And because of running, I think my dad knows me almost better than anybody in the entire world. And he this last week that everybody was in Sacramento, and I couldn't travel to be there with everybody in Sacramento because I was injured and I wasn't racing.
These were your teammates there down there? Or
yeah,
they were down there?
This last weekend. And so my dad actually, he flew in and he hung out with me here in Seattle, and then he ran my mile with me today, and we counted it towards we got 1 mile in, and normally we get more. But so I just always grew up with him and with running, and so it's just something I've always wanted to do and something I've always watched on TV. And
where were the Olympic trials held? Are they down in Eugene?
They were in Eugene.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. What was that like afterwards?
Yeah, so it was a really hard couple of months, because I was in really good shape and I was racing and I was having these good races, but I was also a little bit lost. I felt it's funny, I heard this analogy and it struck home, is when you're surfing and you are out in the ocean and the wave like topples you off your board, and for a second you get disoriented and you have to sit there and you have to make sure that you're swimming up again, because you can't necessarily tell which way is up or down right away. That's how I felt. I felt almost like I was floating there in the water, and I just needed to figure out which direction to start swimming again. And I had a conversation with, and this is one of those times where I think Danny was going through something similar enough as a coach and just being so deep in it, that I spoke with another coach who's a mentor. He lives down at Altus. His name's Dan Paff. And I just was talking with him about the fall and about the trials and everything. And he asked me, why do you run? And then he just let me talk for 30 minutes, and he was listening and listening. And then finally I said, well, the reason I started running is because I feel like it's this awesome way to connect with people and give back, and through my experiences. And he's like, well, finally, I've been waiting for you for 30 minutes to say something that was worthwhile reason for running, and you finally just said one. Because I'd been talking about all the things, I love my job, I love traveling, I love racing, I love competing, I love my team. And
then you found the gold. There was
and I was like, okay. And so I think that then I just had to decide what a successful running career was to me. Can I still have a successful career if I'm not an Olympian? And I think the answer is yes. I think that I can do a lot of things that would make my career a success that have nothing to do with running. I started a camp for high school girls here in Seattle because I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk with these girls about things that I've learned and all the ways that running can teach you lessons that you'll take with you through life, even if you don't run past high school. And so I and those are things that I can do no matter how fast I've run. And I always thought, if I'm not an Olympian, then I shouldn't put on this camp because no one's going to care what I have to say. And I finally just realized, I've learned a lot. And I do think that I have things that are valuable that I can pass on to other runners and that I wish I would have known. I wish somebody would have told me these things when I was in high school. And so
this is your Kicking It. Is it Kicking It with Katie?
Yeah, Kicking It with Katie.
Yeah.
And
have you done just one camp, or is
one
that an
camp?
ongoing?
Last year was my first camp, but I'm going to do it every year.
Great.
So this year I'm going to do it again in the fall. The girls had a great time, and they bonded with each other, and they did not care at all that I was not an Olympian.
Oh yeah,
so
I'm sure.
I was like, this is so silly that I thought that.
Well, you know what? But we all have stories like that we tell ourselves, and especially after something that we've looked forward to for so long, and that we've set expectations for ourselves, and we've built it up. I travel a lot, right? And every time I come back from a trip, there's always a downer, and I always there's always that downtime, and I call it post-trip depression, And that
because it's so sad when it's over,
and then you have to go back to your real life, right?
Yeah, because you've looked forward to it for so long, and it's been this exciting thing that you can think about and daydream about, and then it's over.
Yeah, then it's over, and so then we have to tell ourselves a different story, and find a different purpose, and look forward to something different, which it sounds like you did, and you've created something to look forward to, which is great. And I think, for people listening too, it can be anything, any part of our lives. It doesn't have to be, I don't know, it's any story that we tell ourselves. So it doesn't have to be just coming back from a trip that's a downer or a big goal. But I think it's really important to always have a purpose and always be looking forward to that next thing. I know Richard Branson has this quote about anytime he completes something, and I think he was talking more physically, but he'll complete something, and then he'll say, okay, now I've got to set another goal so I have something else to keep myself in shape and to look forward to. And he's just really open about that. And I thought, that is great. So now I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, this is over. Now what's the next thing that I'm going to start looking forward to and get moving with?
And that's one of the reasons why I think I'll always, after I'm done with this, I will always want to have just like a fun goal that I'm working towards. And I know that we're talking more like broader life, but even with running, like if you have something that's fun that you're looking forward to, like a local road race or a marathon or something, it makes the journey a lot more fun, and to me, anyways.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. So you'll have another camp coming up this year. Are there Olympics in your future? Is that even a possibility?
So I am one of the fortunate athletes that's going to get another try. Of course, you always have to preface this with saying if I stay healthy and I keep running well, but I would love to go through 2020. My plan is to be running with Brooks through 2020 and have another shot at the Tokyo Olympics and the Olympic trials that year.
How do you know now that you have a chance to go to the trials then? How does that work?
Just because we're like contract workers. So we work on cycles. Now, my next cycle is through, and a lot of times.
Do you mean contract workers as in terms of the Brooks Beasts?
Is for Brooks. Yeah.
Well, but how do you get into the Olympic trials to begin with?
Oh, I see. You're asking like different. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm assuming that I will qualify again.
Okay.
I've qualified every year since I've been a pro. You have to run normally a time standard, and then you have to be. They take a certain amount of athletes in each event because there's a certain amount of slots, and normally there's rounds. So for the 1500 at the Olympic trials, there's 3 rounds. And you have to make it through each round to get into the final, which is 12 people. But then since there's 2 races going down to 1, 3 races going down to 2. So they actually take, a bigger number of athletes off of this descending time list. And
so assuming that everything goes well.
Yeah, assuming that I run the qualifier and that I make it to the final in 2020, which none of those things are given every year at the U.S., whether it's the Olympic trials or whether it's the U.S. championships, there's always favorites that don't make it into the final. And whether it's bad luck, getting tripped, or an injury popping up a couple weeks out from USA's, or the worst one to see is lots of times people, think that they're totally fine, and they're like, oh, I'm the favorite, like I'm just going to ease up here. And then you have someone who passes them at the line, and then they miss qualifying for the next round because they've just like eased up and didn't run through the line. I mean, anything can happen, and I think that that's what.
And you could just wake up in the morning and have a
maybe you could be sick.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, the girl who made the team just this last weekend, a couple years ago, we were at USA's together, and she woke up with food poisoning because she ate something bad from Whole Foods and couldn't race. And so it's just, it happens.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I think that sounds great. We can look forward to that. Let me ask you something that I'll speak for myself in terms of this being like from the female perspective, because we do have a lot of female listeners. We tend to like take on a lot. Like we feel we have a responsibility, whether it's family, and I'm assuming you don't have kids, but there's a familial feeling that we feel like we've got to take care of family, whether it's being with your dad, and running, or taking care of the household. Do you have any sorts of pressure like that where you think, man, I should really have a day job, or I really need to think about settling down and having kids, or just anything that might be from a female perspective that you might struggle with? And again, I'm projecting for myself too, because I feel in my own household with my husband, and we don't have kids, so it's a little bit easier. But there's always this feeling of like, well, I should be the one thinking about what's for dinner, or I should be the one who's doing the cleaning or taking care of these particular things around the house. And it's not because anybody ever told me that or because it's expected of me, but it's just this internal pressure. Do you get any of that kind of feeling, or are you so steeped in that world and you've got such a great community and support system and crew around you that's not really a part of your world?
No, I can definitely relate with what you're saying, for sure. Because this is such a unique job, and because there's only so much that you can put your body through during the day, there is a lot of downtime. And so I think that having the team and essentially having coworkers makes the journey so much more fun and more of a sense of purpose. And because I ran, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I was in Boston for 3 months leading up to the 2012 trials, and I didn't have a team, and it was just me and Danny, but he was working. We'd leave for work at 6 a.m. and get back from work at 7 or 8 p.m. I really did not enjoy that. I didn't, I was just kind of like on my own all day, and I did really feel like, oh, what am I doing here? Like and so I think, having a little bit of that routine and having people that are going through the similar experience, it's a shared experience. Exactly, so that really helps. Right. So I think that that's what, if you can find people who you can like share your experiences with, and that can help with a lot of purpose and meaning. And because humans, we're social people, and we like need each other a little bit.
Well, you bring up a really good point, because my business, I work from home, and so and I'm not talking to a lot of people during the day. I am talking to a lot of people, but they're all in my head.
I talk to my cat a lot.
Yeah, I have a lot of conversations going on, so I don't have that interaction of like, hey, like, how do you deal with this kind of thing? Because I don't have that camaraderie, but you've got it built in, which makes a lot of sense, which is a great thing.
Yeah, which makes a big difference. And then I think on another thing that kind of comes to mind with that question, it's a little different, but I think that this is a lot of the reason why a lot of talent is washed out too early in track and field. And there's this false sense in sports that athletes that are younger are better at sports, because like I said, I think that the peak is later for most people, but I think that a lot of athletes don't have that support system that allows them to get to that point where they have people, whether it be family, spouse, team, that are supportive of them okay, you're doing this weird thing. You don't have a job. You're going after these goals, and they're really high level goals, and maybe you're not going to reach them. But it doesn't mean that you're wasting your time or that it's not worth it or that you shouldn't keep going. And a lot of the times, maybe it's support, maybe it's monetary support, track and field, there's not a ton of money in it. And so I think it's really sad because I think that there's a lot of really talented people who just weren't able to make it to the point
because they didn't have for whatever reason they didn't have the right support system, right?
Yeah.
No fault of their own, just
it's just the way that it kind of is set up right now.
That's too bad. Do you have a problem with when we talk about kind of the group activities, do you have a problem disciplining yourself, or are you really good about no, if I have this bag of chips, then I know that I'm going to feel this way afterwards, or I'm not going to feel good tomorrow? Or do you have that little angel or devil on your shoulder kind of talking to you?
Well, yeah, and that's why I don't keep track all year round.
Right, so you allow yourselves a cheat month or a cheat day.
Yeah,
or
most of the year, I'm just trying to think, okay, 80-90% good, 10-20% bad, and just kind of winging it. And then when it gets to the time in the year when I'm really serious, then I am keeping track. But I still give myself a cheat day and a cheat meal. So normally after long run, there's a Kid Valley down the street from where Danny and I live, and I'm like, Danny, I just need some garlic fries and a shake and a burger, a cheeseburger, with bacon on top.
You're not a Red Mill burger fan? That's my favorite.
Oh no, I do love them. It's just close to our house, and I smell it all the time. And so, but whatever that is for you, I think that it's important to not get too caught up in things where you can feel whatever you're doing, it has to be sustainable. And so that's what's sustainable for me, is leaving myself that wiggle room. And then also, and it doesn't have to be that. It's sometimes I'm out with friends and I'm like, you know what? Beer sounds really good right now. And
then you're not so hard on yourself because you've got the wiggle room and you are allowing yourself that. And then you don't have to beat yourself up.
It's not one meal that's going to make or break. It's what you do most of the time.
Lifelong
that's going to make or break. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to bring up?
No, I just wasn't sure. We kind of got derailed. Did you want to talk more about the places I traveled while running, or not?
Yes, let's talk about that. Well, actually, we did talk about a number of those because you talked about the ones that were kind of your favorites.
Yeah, and then I kind of got sidetracked talking about how I don't get to see a lot of the time.
That's true.
But what I was going to say was that the trip to Morocco stands out as being so fun because I was there for a longer period of time with Team USA. We were there for a week, so I got to actually go into the market, and I got a barter for a rug that I still have in my living room floor that I do my exercises on every morning. And so every once in a while we get to really go in and see an area. And so that's one of my favorite parts of our job, is just all the things that I've been able to see.
So when you go to a place like Morocco, are you able to run? And let's use Morocco as an example, because I imagine that it's not an easy place to run, because I've been to a lot of cities and I've tried to run, and sometimes it means getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to miss the 6 a.m. motorbike traffic and the worst of the pollution. So when you were in Morocco, were you able to run?
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate that when I'm traveling, most of the time it's for a track meet. So we were there, and there was sometimes it's really boring. For that example, we were staying, and there was a little golf course next to the place we were staying in. So we had to watch out for wild dogs because there was some wild dogs that were off the golf course was just kind of like desert, and they were out there, and then they would come in. So we had to go on this short little stretch where there was guards. So in case the wild dogs came, the guards would kind of, they had weapons, they could shoo them away. So we just ran back and forth and back and forth. And of course it was so hot, we would get up early in the morning and do it. So sometimes you have situations like that. And another place like that was Shanghai. The only place where we could run was on the track. So for the 3 or 4 days that I was there, all of my running I did was just around the track in the stadium. But sometimes we go places and the running is amazing and beautiful, and we're on trails and we see something really cool. And So it's really hit or miss. One of my favorite runs last year was I got into the Monaco Diamond League meet, and I just by chance on my cool down I found this little path that went right along the ocean, and I had just raced, and then I was cooling down, and I just had to stop and be like, wow, this is so cool that I'm here right now, and I just came upon this by chance, and it's so beautiful. And so you just really appreciate when you do kind of stumble along.
And you probably didn't have
cool
a phone
like
to take photos or anything.
No, I did, because I always,
Okay.
sometimes I run with my phone if I'm on a cool down, just in case I get lost.
Okay.
And I need to find my way back or get some help.
Because it didn't happen if you didn't have a photo of it, Exactly. If it wasn't on Instagram.
I took a picture, but it was way too dark. You couldn't see anything. I wanted to show Danny. I was like, look at this beautiful place. And then he's like, yeah, you can't see anything.
Well, you have to go back then.
Yeah. Well, that was an expensive place to go back to, but it was really cool.
How do you keep your regular schedule, and that's eating and running when you're traveling like that? Like, do you guys bring all your food with you, all your nutrition that you need, or do you rely on what's there?
That's one of the biggest challenges. Is I used to be really regimented in what I would eat and before races and before training, and I had to just really learn to give that up and be way more flexible with traveling, because you just can't carry all the food that you need with you in your suitcase when you're on the road for
I've
3
tried.
weeks. Yeah. Like, of course, I'll bring snacks, and I'll bring with me supplements and vitamins and stuff like that I can't just buy anywhere that I am. But besides that, I just really try and be flexible and try and make good nutrition choices. But for racing, it depends. Like, the traveling part of it is obviously comes with a number of challenges. But when we're actually at the meets, they provide food for us. So
what supplements, vitamins, and then like energy products or protein products do you use on a regular basis?
Yeah. Recovery drinks are probably one of the more important things that I do every day, because if you can get something into your body right after you're done exercising, within that 20 or 30 minute window, that's really readily absorbable, then your body is just going to like top off the tanks and that's right away, and you're going to feel better.
Right, and that's with the appropriate ratio of carbs to protein on that, right?
Carbs to protein. So I normally do just a fourth of a cup of whey protein and a scoop of Gatorade, and it's really simple, but that's what our nutritionist recommends. And so the protein and the carbs just like right away, because I used to always eat food afterwards, but he's like, well, it takes time for your body to break that down in the stomach and then absorb it. So you don't want to drink a really sugary drink like Gatorade really any other time rather than when you're exercising or immediately afterwards, so that your body doesn't have to mess with digestion. It can just absorb it right away. But so we do that, and then we take like a multivitamin, fish oil, vitamin D, and then we take a lot of like branched chain amino acids.
And then do you do things to keep down the inflammation? Like when I do a run, and it's actually kind of my treat after every run, I come home and I make a protein shake.
Yep.
And I do soy milk, I do fruit, kale, spinach, and then I do turmeric.
Yep.
As an anti-inflammatory. I take a swig of tart cherry juice.
Oh, yeah.
And then
our nutritionist has us doing that too.
Yeah, and then I took and Trader Joe's has great, like really great tart cherry juice. And then I'll take a glucosamine as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then what else? And then I put some other things, some like the superfoods. I do chia seeds, and I'll do camu and maca powder and all this other stuff. I just toss that all in there.
Well, all that you're doing sounds perfect. That sounds really good. You are doing the right thing.
Good. Well, I just know that the anti-inflammatory, like that's just so much in the news. And that's where my croutons are bad, because I know that the croutons are not good for me in terms of that kind of the carbs in that. But yeah, I try to do all the anti-inflammatory stuff. So.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes a big difference, because when you're exercising, you're creating inflammation. Because you're tearing down muscle tissue in your body, then inflammatory response is how your body goes on to rebuild all of that again. So if you can do things that help your body bring that inflammatory response down as quickly as possible, then you're going to recover quicker, and you're going to feel better, and you're going to have less of a chance of getting injured, and you're going to feel, you're going to run better. And So
What
definitely.
did you study at the University of Washington?
I studied public health.
So you have a background in health and nutrition, probably, and
Yeah.
and then just after so many years, and being in that environment, you're just absorbing all this information. Because I'm constantly seeking out articles and information about this and trying to retain it all. But you've got some of that in your background.
Well, that's one of the things I'm most fortunate about with this job is I just get to work with experts in every field. I get our nutritionist is a doctor of nutrition, and he's an amazing wealth of information. And same with our physiologist. Same with Danny. Same with a lot of these doctors that we come in contact with and work with, because we're traveling. So we're coming in contact with not only people in Seattle, but people through the whole U.S., people throughout the whole world. And so it is just like this wealth of information, and it's pretty cool to be able to pick people's brains. And I always am talking about something different and new.
Do you keep up with Michael Gervais, what he does? Are you familiar with
No.
him? So he works with the Seattle Seahawks quite a bit.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think he's from Seattle, but he has a podcast called Finding Mastery. And
Danny listens to that podcast.
Oh,
Yes,
my
and
gosh.
I've listened to a few episodes, but it's really good.
He is great. Yeah. So he's a sports psychologist.
Yes.
And that just brings a whole different element to it as well, which I just find really fascinating. So I love listening to that podcast. It's when I'm out for my run, I listen to it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one.
So a couple more quick questions. When you do your long run, do you fuel along the way, or are you just out for 17 miles and you don't need to fuel?
Yeah, I used to not fuel, but now I do. I take like Goose or like Gatorade with me.
Great.
Yeah.
Because I have to fuel probably I'll do my fourth or fifth mile. I'll take my first goo gel, and then I'm 3 miles after that, and I'm really strict about it because otherwise I do a crash. And
Yep. It's really crazy how much of a difference that makes. And our nutritionist explained it to me really simply. He goes, imagine that you're sitting in a hot tub and there's a hole in the hot tub and the water is flowing out at a certain rate. He's like, you wouldn't wait until you're sitting in the empty hot tub to start putting water in it, would you? You would start putting in small amounts of water as the small amounts of water are going out. So you're sitting in the full hot tub. And I was like, oh, yeah. So, because I always used to wait until, an hour and a half into my run until I felt it. And then I would take the goo, and he's like, at that point, he's like, your digestive system's already shut down. Everything is already, everything's already low. So what you're doing is good. You want to start taking it. Now what I do is I take it, 3 miles into the run, and then every couple miles after that, and just a little bit.
Right. And I remember even on my super long runs, and I'll do in training for this upcoming marathon, I was doing 22 miles. And I would just say, even if I didn't want it, I would just make myself eat something. So my big, my secret weapon, I call it, at like mile 18 or Starburst fruit chews. And I'm not I love sugar, but I don't eat it. Like I just have to stay away from it. But I would never go pick up a package of Starburst. But when I'm running and I'm like, mile 18, I'm like, Starburst, I gotta have Starburst.
Yes. It's crazy how I'm similar in that way as well. Like I would prefer salty foods most of the time, but then when I'm exercising, the sugar, it's that
little
what
boost.
Your body needs.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little boost readily available.
So anything else you want to cover?
No, not unless there's something else that you would want.
You had mentioned that there's lots of books out there on nature versus nurture when we were speaking earlier about that. Are there ones that come top of mind that you could mention? And I can pop those in the show notes too.
I love the book Sports Gene.
I've been
so
wanting to read that.
Yeah. So that's the one that comes to mind that I would recommend.
Okay, good.
The one that I want to read that's on my list, but I haven't actually read it yet, but I've heard a lot of really good things about it, is Peak Performance. That was just written by a coach we know, Steve Magnus. And so that's next on my list to read. But
I'll put those on my list. And then finally, this is the Be Bold podcast. So tell me what being bold means to you.
I think being bold means doing things that scare you, having goals that scare you, and not being deterred if you don't achieve them right away, but really just picking yourself back up and continuing to go after them and finding purpose in the journey.
Being persistent with it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Katie, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no,
This is a
thanks for
great
having me
conversation.
on.
And now I have to go back and take lots of notes because there's so much great information in here for me.
Okay, good,
So,
good. I'm
thanks.
glad I could help. And honestly, if you ever have questions, and even anybody listening to this podcast, it might take me a while because sometimes I don't see them right away, but I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and that's the great thing about social media is now you can reach the person directly. So if you do have questions, you just say, hey, I listened to this podcast and I have this question, and you can just send me a message over Instagram, and I'll try to get back to you.
Great. So what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is at Katie F. Mackey, and then my Instagram handle is at MackeyKB.
Okay, great.
So-
and again, I'll put that in the show notes so people can find that. And then are you on Facebook or just?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, but probably I would be more likely to see it if you messaged me
great.
on like Instagram or Twitter. Yeah.
Super. We'll do that. And we'll follow you, and we'll follow you to Tokyo in 2020 also.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. If I hadn't already found running, I probably would want to because she makes it sound like so much fun. I really like the fact that she finds so much community in her sport. And I'm really such a lone wolf that it's difficult for me to identify with that. But again, she just obviously has a lot of fun in what she's doing. A reminder that if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play and leave a review. Those reviews really do help the podcast get more exposure and will ultimately help us grow our Be Bold community. I bet you know a few people in your world who would also enjoy today's episode and this podcast in general, so please do share. Podcasts are a new thing for some people, so if you've got a friend who doesn't know how to download them, take a moment to give them a lesson. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com, and you can find all the show notes there as well. Also, check out wandertours.com. That's where you'll see the tours I lead around the world, as well as our culinary tours to Santa Fe, New Orleans, and Seattle. You can friend me on Facebook, and I'm WanderGal on Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site, and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. I've also started sending out Wander List, a monthly roundup of my favorite gear, music, podcast episodes, and other items that I've discovered and want to share. You generally won't find these on my social media channel, so that newsletter is a special place for that information. If you know of any high-performing, adventurous, philanthropic women whom you think might be a good guest, shoot me a note or leave a comment. And finally, the ladies can join us on our Be Bold Facebook group. That's where you'll find our growing community. It's where we share goals, talk about our setbacks, and where you can find words of encouragement and inspiration from others. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.